Today we're going to be doing a video on the disassembly and assembly of the SKS column refrigerator. This is a 30-inch. We make these in 30 and 24-inch. Now, this unit does not have the front panel. We're going to shoot a separate video on installing and adjusting the panels, because the panel for the refrigerator, the freezer, and the wine cooler are all going to be the same, so we're just going to do that video there. So we're starting with bare front. When you open up the unit, now please note my unit is not installed, so we left it on the pallet so that it didn't tilt. The unit has a display board up top that has to be touched to activate. I've unplugged the unit so we could do the disassembly on it. There is a built-in water dispenser. Push the button to get the water. You wind up having 3 storage drawers. You have the buckets, which are designed to pop off and go to the table and then come back and sit back in. They're adjusted by raising out on the bottom, moving them to where you want, and reattaching. So easily adjustable. We have 3 shelves and then 2 flat spots. Now, all these shelves feature LG's shelf lighting, where we're using wireless power transfer from here to the pack here to light up underneath each one, along with lights up top. Now, because this unit does have a water dispenser, it also has a water valve, or a water filter that you pull this out. This is a tool that attaches to the bottom of the water filter to allow for easy insertion, tightening it up, and then a place to put the tool so it doesn't get lost, so when the customer needs to change their water filter. Okay? Now, these units do have the ability to change the door swing. They can be opened either from left to right or right to left, and in the installation and in the service manual, it goes through the procedures to reverse doors if that's necessary. I'm only going to worry about servicing of the product. Today's video is just to get it out in the field in case you get on one of these before we build deeper training. Okay? So, as we did with the wine cooler in a previous video, we're going to start at the top, show you what all's up there, how to gain access to it, then we'll come down and disassemble the inside, and then we'll go into the machine compartment. So let us get moved up and we'll go to the top. To begin with, we're going to start up at the top. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 screws I'm going to remove to pull this fascia out a little bit so I can get to the filter head assembly located behind this. Once the 4 screws are removed, you can now work this out a little bit, and you're going to be stopped, and you're going to have to reach back and disconnect these quick connects here. You've got one quick connect for the room thermistor. You've got one quick connect for the door switch. Then over here on the far side, you have a quick connect, or it's actually connected into the board, the humidity sensor. Then move this out of your way so you can work. Now, the service manual actually shows to change these 3 parts out that you would need to take the door off, uninstall this whole top section to get to those 3 pieces. We have found that by removing those 4 screws and pulling out, I can change these 3 switches from the installed position. Everything I'm doing today, I'm doing with the fact that I don't want to go behind or above, because I'm trying to simulate this is installed. But as you saw, 4 screws, pull it out, I can get to the switches. Okay, up top, I'm just going to use my hands for pointing for a second. These are your 2 harnesses that go to the door switch and to the room thermistor. Had to think for a minute. This other harness is the one that went to the humidity sensor. So they're all located right here. Now this is filter head assembly, connects to the tubing, and this tubing, if he'll pan over to the back right corner, all the tubing is a conduit. So if years down the road, or if during installation somebody nicked that line, these lines were designed to be changed. You can go down inside the refrigerator compartment, disconnect from the reservoir, and these lines fully pull out. So now, if we were here because we needed to get to the filter head assembly for whatever reason, I'm going to keep my hands now below installed level. What we found out is a ratchet is a little hard to do, so I went and purchased a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench. Why they chose to use bolts as long as you're going to see here is beyond me, but they're about 1 inch long bolts, and we had a problem getting a socket in here the other day, so I went out and purchased this 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench just to remove these two screws. And this comes in handy both on the refrigerator and freezer, because the freezer has an ice maker, so it has a head assembly very close to what you're seeing right here on the refrigerator. That's one of the bolts. And there's the other bolt. That allows this little piece, I'm going to come above, to come loose. Now I can grab my head assembly and it will pull out for service. So the head assembly is fully serviceable. Now just for the video, I'm coming above, but as you can see, I'm going to twist this. You do have the modified water fittings here with the collars, pull out, push in. You know that you should only be able to see one black line. So you could actually take this apart at the two unions to replace your head assembly. If you were going to replace these water lines, you could disconnect at the back side, go inside the refrigerator, disconnect, pull the lines down, and then feed the new line set back up. Now, one of the things we found on one of the units we were working on is it had a wire tie in here holding these lines together, so that when we went to pull it, we didn't have enough stretch. But what we found is my arm was big enough that I was able to go in. This unit doesn't have it, so maybe they're all not zip tied in the same place. But I did find out I could go in, cut the zip tie with a pair of dikes, come out, pull it, work on it, put it back, get my hand in there and re-zip tie the line. Now I'm sure the reason they had the line zip tied was because due to the customer's water pressure, you didn't want bump, 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 bump when they were getting water. So if necessary, you can come in here. Once you get this back in position, zip tie these down so they don't move around, so you don't get the thumping noise. So now, when you go to put it back, you're going to push this back in, and it fits in a little lip in the back. Sorry, keep my hands out from anywhere you can't reach. And I'm just going to show you, if you got it right, if it won't lift up. Because right now I'm pulling upward. So that lip went under that lip back there in the back. Then you're going to take this little piece of metal that we took off. You're going to place it. Make sure you don't do anything to hide or put these in the wrong place like I just did. So I'm going to pull this back over to where it was. This actually came around the edge, so I've got plenty of room there. And these two. So you're going to slide this back, and you'll see where the two lines are. Just for the purpose of the video, I'm showing you it's caught. So once that's there, make sure your harnesses are laid over. Take this little piece of metal and place it back over the top, and then put your two 10mm bolts in and snug them back down. Guys, the 4 screws I pulled out, the 2 on the left by the water filter are gray to match this. The 2 over here are silver. All right. Now, just while we're up here, I'm going to point one more thing out. Up here at the top, again, if the door were to have to be removed, in the service manual, and we're going to have to find out because we haven't got our panels yet. The service manual shows to remove these 2 bolts and these 2 bolts and take the door off. Then it shows to loosen these 2 screws up, slide the hinge assembly, take it off, do the lower one the same way. We have found we can remove the entire door. It is a 2-man process due to the weight. By loosening these 2, loosening the bottom, 2 guys holding the door, pull it over, out, and move it. What we're waiting to see is if with the door panels in place, if the risk of damaging this is greater by leaving the panel on. So once we get our panels and find out, we may have to put a little note here. Please remove door skin before you remove the door. But for right now, this unit we don't have to remove the door for. But if we did, we were changing the door, that's how you do it. Also, right here, it's a T30. There is a screw that when you screw it, it moves from one side to the other side. This is used to adjust the tension in the spring for the door closing. Once the panels and all are on the door, you may have to adjust the tension, but one's all the way tension full, tension off, so you'll have to adjust accordingly. All right, now, okay, the next thing we're going to go through is removing all the shelves so we can service the inside. To remove the shelves, all you do is lift up and pull out. Now be careful because again, the sides walls are made of metal. Now, what I want to show you here is all these shelves on this refrigerator are going to have an R. Now, if you're familiar with some of our other refrigerators that have the split shelves, you know there's an R, and on the opposite, the other shelf, there'll be an L. It stands for left and right. What it's referring to is where this piece right here is located, because this is the piece that gets its power to light up the LED. Now, on this refrigerator, since we don't use split shelves, we're using all rights because we put the power strip on the right hand side of the box. So the customer's not going to have a problem with, they can't accidentally put the right on the left and the lights not work. Now, this is adjustable. You've got a couple of screws. This piece would come out. There's a wire, and this LED would just slide all out as one piece. You can replace the LED or you can replace this piece, depending on which one's the problem causing the no light issue. Okay, now, the drawer, slide the drawer out and then just lift up and the drawer comes out just like that. It sits in this bucket. Now, the bucket itself, there are 2 clips up under the bucket that you have to and it did sound like they were going to break, but they don't. These clips right here, you have to push in, and you can see there's a little notch there that catches in here. So with this all the way out, reach under, push down as you're lifting up on this carrier, and it'll come out. We've taken several of these apart, and they always sound like you're going to snap, and it's just that hard plastic popping. So you have one on each side. Now the TV tray on top, all you do is, this thing now can lift up, disconnect, just like a shelf, and bring the whole carrier out. Due to the weight, I would not try it with the shelf still, or the drawer still inside. All right, the next one, what you may want to do, get those up out of the way. This does the same thing, it just lifts off. And then pull out again. I'm sorry, in, and it comes off. Okay, the TV tray, just lift up and come out. It does have a little catch in the back, so when you go to put it back in the front, put these in until you feel it catch that ramp. Putting a little bit of slight pressure down as you push it back. And sometimes you got to play with it a little, but now it's in correctly. All right, so up and slide out. Now, bottom drawer, same way, just lift up and out. Push in, take the bottom piece off. Now to get this tray out, we need to remove the upper brackets first. But for right now, I'm going to stop and we're going to go back to the top. Alright, this unit is going to send air flow down here and in the front. So your duct assembly, you're shooting air up, it's looping over, some's coming down the back and some's coming down the front. To get your control console off, just like our wine cooler, there it is, right here is the button, and there's one also on the opposite side. And those are your two buttons. So now you're going to remove the two screws up here in the top. Now, slide the control console just slightly forward. And when you do, the top, you can now slide your control console down and remove the two wiring harness connectors and pull this out. And what you have here is your display board and your LED lighting. And these are your two connectors. Now here and here where the buttons I pulled out are the screws. There is a third button on the refrigerator that has to be removed to get the top down. Pull down slightly, pull forward, and then reach over and disconnect your wiring harness. And this harness is providing your power to your LED and to your thermistor, which is located right here inside those little grates. So that's this. Now, the second connector up here, you take and pull it out. This is that wireless power transfer strip. This strip, we found the easiest way is to take a putty knife, get in and start it coming out. And once you get it started, you can start working it all the way up. Just be careful, you don't want to scratch the customer's finish, but it does pop out fairly easy. I know it may not seem that way, but it is popping out fairly easy. And this is your power transfer strip. This is your harness you saw up at the top. All these coils are providing the necessary power that when the shelf is, I've actually measured about 1/8 of an inch gap between the shelf and here. This is what transfers the voltage over to the shelf to illuminate the LEDs. So here's this one. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to drop down and remove some of these brackets and sliders so we can get into the back of the refrigerator. Before we can take off the air duct assembly and the grill cover, we need to remove these. Now this top one, there's one Phillips screw, and once it comes out, just pull outward carefully, and there's a little lip in the back that goes into a hole in the back of the unit. There's 4 screws here. And this comes out. Here's that trigger you're pushing back. See where that little catch is? That's where the bucket sits. So when you push back, that's where you're hearing that click, because that little catch just snap, and then the bucket lifts out. And you have one on each side, as you remember. And these are self-closing. They get so far back, they'll go ahead and pull themselves back. With those off, now we can take and lift up slightly and pull this out. This has the same setup as the other one as far as putting it back in. Now, go ahead and remove your next 2 guides and 2 rail assemblies. Okay, now that we've removed these guide and the rail, you get to the back. Now, since this unit does have a water dispenser, we have a reservoir. If all you need to do is get to that reservoir, you would only need to disassemble this bottom section, and then you're going to take a putty knife and right here and pop that out. Don't let it go back like I just did. And this cover comes off. There is your water reservoir. Now, it's loose. You can actually pull it out a little bit, and they tell you to take the tape off. What I'm going to do is wait till I get this off to disassemble so you got a better view and we're not shooting into this dark corner. But you could actually service the reservoir from right here. Now, if I want the whole fan grill assembly off, I've got 2 more screws that I need to take out. Out, you have one connector, then kind of lift up, and remember this reservoir is kind of sitting on it, so you got to kind of lift it out of the way. And you've got 2 catches, or 3, 1, 2, 3. So you got to lift that and slide, because you have an arm here and you have the place where the reservoir is sitting. So it's kind of lean, lift, pull. You also have 2 12-volt LED lightings here inside. It's part of what that's what your connector is going to. Now, this unit also has a charcoal air filter located down here at the bottom. That if a customer calls you and says, hey, I want to change my air filter, where's it at? All they have to do is go to the very bottom, pull the drawer out, and this lifts up for replacement. It is a customer replaceable part. Now, we can now see our evaporator. We can see our defrost heater. We can see how low it goes close to the drain to prevent any problems there. We've got our fuses, our thermistor. We also have our fan motor coming in from here to our fan motor that blows the air up, around, and circulates. And we also have the quick connect to our water valve right here. Now remember, we have two water valves. There's this one and the one in the machine compartment we'll get to. Now from here, I told you I'd show you this. You can take and it's probably easier. Pull the clip out here, push in on the collar, and you can pull that off there, and this makes it a whole lot easier to work with. I'm trying to reuse the tape so I can keep this in as close to factory looking as possible. In the field, I would expect you just to retape it. But once you take the tape off, now you can come down here, and there's a little bit of room. You've got water, and you can come to the bottom. Okay. I know you couldn't see that, so we're going to bring it out here. Guys, there is another lock on this fitting. Pull the lock, push the fitting in, and that I was able to take it off the water. So now you see your water reservoir. This can be replaced if necessary. This comes into your valve, comes out into the reservoir, and comes out down there. Now this is one of the tubes that I was telling you could be changed because of that conduit that comes down and around. So all the water lines in this refrigerator are replaceable. You would just need to disconnect and pull it out. They go straight into a conduit right there. The other one goes straight down into a conduit toward the bottom, and we'll see the rest of it when we get down below. So the styrofoam is there to help protect it from freezing and keep it off. Plus there's that divider on the grill that also keeps the coldest air off. Now keep in mind, since this is a refrigerator, we're not going to be dropping to sub-zero temperature. We're keeping a compartment somewhere between 37 and 37 degrees is what we're actually looking for. I'm sure they might run it a little bit colder. So there's your disconnect for your water valve. All right, now, if I wanted to get my fan motor out, disconnect. Take that one screw out. Now, pull outward, and as you saw, everything just clips. And here's my fan and multi-duct assembly. Now, once I take this out, I would be able to go in and remove the screws just to get to my fan motor. But this is your multi-duct. This is thin, because remember, the air is going to be pushed through this up, where part of it will be coming into the refrigerator. The other part will be coming across the top, and then coming down the front. So all this does is clip in. Here's one clip, two clip, or the hole for the clip to snap into. So when you go to put it back, you're going to lift it up, you'll kind of feel it, and then snap, 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 and it'll snap all the way in. So here is a totally disassembled inside of the compartment. To reassemble, you're going to take this, And what I found is catch that top one, kind of catch it in there. If you've done everything right, your screw hole should line up, and mine's perfect right there. And we're back in business. Now, what you do want to make sure you do is once you've got this back, use the palm of your fist and make sure all this, excuse me, is snapped back like right there. That looks a little better. And you can tell by the distance if you're all the way back in. You don't want to hit it to where you could produce a dent in that thin metal. So that's why I said use the palm of your hand to snap it all back into place. All right. Reassembly is basically the reverse order. First thing we've got to do is find my little clip here again. Think about how this is going in. You know this has got to go in here, so that way you don't put it in backwards. You're going to place this in the bottom and just shove in. But do make sure you're putting the locks back in. We do not want to risk a water leak. And you can see there's a peg here to come here, here to come here. Probably should have left one end loose till I get my styrofoam cover back on. Pull out. Place my lock in. Make certain that everything looks good here. And remember, this is going to be sitting on the shelf, so it's not going to be sitting on the floor. Okay? Now, I don't know, because this is new, if this is going to be an issue, but where that line comes in and out at the bottom, it's got about 2 inches of play. If you were to see, after working on this reservoir, a buildup of frost here, it might be a good idea to take a small piece of putty, permagum, and once you've got all this back in place, put some permagum around this opening so there's no chance of us getting air migration in here that could cause excess frost. That right now is just I'm not sure. Replug your fan in. Like I said, defrost thermistor, your heaters. Okay. Now, the back panel. Now remember, I was telling you, the water reservoir rests on this foot, this ledge, and you got this little foot here, and you got this little foot here. Plus you have these 3 tabs that have to go, excuse me, into these 3 slots. So when you go to put this back in, first off, don't forget to connect your wiring harness. Don't want to get it all in and forgot that. And what I found was if I lift up on the water reservoir a little bit and get it into place, because it's actually coming forward a little, slide this in, and once these 3 tabs line up, this is going to go down. Now, as you see right here, I missed this. This side is actually down a little lower, so I'm going to need to pull this back out a little bit. In fact, the only way to do that is I need to pull this trim back off, disconnect my harness. I'm glad I caught this. But this is something that could happen in the home very easily. Even though my hole lined up here, don't forget, disconnect your fan motor. Now, pull this back out, push forward all the way to the top again. And check your gap here and here. I checked sides a while ago, but I did not look closely up here, and I had too much gap here. As such, the fan grill would not go back into position. So now, screw holes there. My filter fell out on me. Wiring harness back up. Also, double check, I'd left my fan undone. Plug it in. So the 2 things you take off, well, to get the multi-duct off, you got to take the fan, and then your wiring harness for your lights. So lift up on the reservoir, make sure it's coming to the front, make sure those 3 pegs are in. And now, okay, as you saw, I had to kind of help it. It's a snug fit, but everything's lined up. I got 2 screw holes. This is here. My clips all went in the right places. I'm going to set this back a little. Okay, all that's looking good. That's looking good. Now I've got 2 screws. Come back. Then your cover has 2 little tabs over here that fit into the side wall, and then this just comes over and snaps into position. That's back. So at this point, we would begin putting our gliding shelves back, our stationary support, gliding shelf, stationary support, and rebuilding the inside of the refrigerator. Okay, to remove the water dispenser, place something under and pop out a little bit, then lift, and you'll work this outside area off. And you'll notice there's some clips right here. Once this is off, you can now lower this down. You see there's a spring and a catch, and this can actually be unclipped. You can actually pull a little excess tubing this way to give you room to work. You see the little catches here and the snaps here. Then this little paddle has 2 snap clips that with a pocket screwdriver, I don't see any reason you would ever have to take this off unless you were replacing it for already being broken. but if you carefully press in, you see that little tip you're getting out of the hole, just press in slightly. This is a spring here, so it always pushes back, and when the actuator hits the little micro switch, which causes the water valves to energize and send water through here. So this is the last of the assemblies inside the refrigerator. Just be careful if you're pulling this paddle out. Like I said, I don't see a reason you would unless it was broken. But trying to take it out while it's good is not the easiest thing, and not breaking it. There. Now I'm going to put a few of the railings back on, and then we'll come back to the video to show you the reassembly of the buckets. So the first thing we have to do is pull out the bottom, and this is going to connect. You've got a little connection that's going to happen right here, and it'll snap in here. Just make sure this goes in, and you heard it snap. So put that one in. Next, you can go ahead and put your drawer. Like I said, it fits right into it, and that goes back. Your divider, remember again, this little piece right here. On this one, it's kind of tight because you've got the other piece right above it. Just slide it back in. Okay. A description of what I just did here. Just found out, I hadn't realized it, that this bar has to go on before these are screwed into place. So what I did is I took 3 screws out on each side to give me a little bit of play, and this shelf, this top piece goes in. So when we do the next one, there's nothing above it, so it's not an issue. But this has to be put in prior to these being secured in the front. Remember, these have to clip in, so just kind of place them on here, then slide them backward. There's a little catch in the back that's going to catch, so kind of have the front up, and you know you caught it. And once again, the actual drawer, will fit right on top and go in. Then the last fixed drawer, or I guess divider, drawer top, put it in at a slight angle, like we said earlier, run it in. It's got to go over the light, and it falls into place. Everything else is a hook and drop, with the exception of we have to put in our lights, the bar. So just make sure it's pushed all the way up to the top before you start. Make sure the harness is all the way up. Push it all the way to the rear first. Snap it into position. Plug the harness in at the top. The drawer with rail combination. Now this is adjustable. So the customer can set this wherever they like. If they want to leave just enough room to, say, put a pizza box or something there, that's their call. Again, remember to put this in, slightly raised toward the front until it locks. Leave it out to put your drawer in. Then the shelves. before I go any further with shelving, I need to return this. So you're going to see where this has got a little clip, a little prong that goes above right here on the multi-duct. And remember, it's got one screw holding it that doesn't have anything to do with your display. So you're going to want to take this, place it up here to where you can plug in your wiring harness. Raise this up, put that clip in, push back, and it's got little tabs that'll kind of hold it for a second until you can get that screw in there. Remember, it's got a cap or a button, goes over to hide the screw. Okay, this one has 4 pieces. These 4 little cutouts line up with these 4 nylon washers. So you're actually catching that. These tabs will slide below or between this cover and the roof, and the screw you're going to put in to finish supporting this upper duct also holds this from moving. So go ahead and get this up and plug in your 2 harnesses. Being careful not to scratch your customer's finish. Come in, make sure your harnesses aren't in the way, raise it all the way to the roof, angle it a little, and it goes all the way back till it kind of butts up. 2, 1, and one last shelf. And this concludes the disassembly and reassembly of the inside. Now, this was a SKS CR. C stands for column, R stands for refrigerator, just so you'll know. And if it's a freezer, it'd be CF. And if it's the wine cooler, it'd be CW. So the C is column. This is actually a 30-inch wide refrigerator. Keep in mind, we do make a 24 also. So you could put a 24 refrigerator and a 24 freezer, or a 30 and an 18, trying to make that 48-inch space. All right, so now we'll go through and go into the machine compartment. All right, to get into the machine compartment, you're going to have 2 screws here and 1 screw over here. On the column refrigerators, whichever side the hinge is on, you'll have 1 screw, 2 on the opposite side. Now, when you're coming into these, you want to be careful, because we found out if you use your cordless drill or power screwdriver, what tends to happen is you can damage these and scratch them up. I'm a little curious to find out if we're going to standardize this or not. We've gotten 2 units where this front grill comes off with Phillips, and this one's actually using T20s. So be prepared for either. And there's your grill assembly. To get this kick plate off, we also have 2 other Torx. Again, I don't know if we're going to have Torx or Phillips here, so guys, please have both tools available. This is your Wi-Fi board. Do not attempt to unplug from the board. One, the lock's on the back side. Two, it's glued in. Come in and unplug it and pull the harness out, just like this. Once you've gained access, what we're going to do here is we're going to first remove our water valve, then we're going to remove our PCB, then we're going to go ahead and pull our condensing unit out to show you how you would service it. Alright, so first things off, we need to get this water valve taken off. So you're going to come over and you're going to remove these two screws. You're going to remove your ground wire from your PCB and this other ground wire off your power cord, and then we'll be able to drop this down, remove this water line, or excuse me, wiring connection, and then we'll disconnect this water line and we'll be able to lay the valve out of our way. Since these are machine thread, I always like to take and slightly put them back so I don't forget where they came from. Just like any other water line on an LG product, you've got your little clip, your safety clip. Pull it off, press in on the connector, and then you can pull the water line out. Now there's enough room here, we can just lay this over out of our way. Now, to get the PCB board out, what you need to do is disconnect all the harnesses coming up here into the roof. Now, you also need to loosen this screw and take this top piece out so it's out of your way. Now this is down out of the way. Then continue to remove your harnesses. Okay. Then you have two screws right here holding your PCB in place. Now pull out and then angle. Out and then pull out and just work it from underneath. Now, if we needed to get into the actual board itself, metal cover comes off and we've got a clamshell just pop up on the clips. Keep tension because as you pop one, the rest of them are going to want to go back. And now you've got access to your main PCB. To reassemble, just make sure all your harnesses are coming through correctly. Don't pinch anything. Line up your tabs with your little slots again. Make sure you got all 6 of them out. And everything should snap right back together. Once you've done that, you can lay the board back down on the ground. Just make sure all the routing is coming up so it doesn't get pinched when you put the metal cover back on. Now, since we're just going to disassembly, I'm going to leave this over here out of the way. And now, if we were going in for a seal system repair, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, 5 screws that have to come out for this panel to come forward. While it's all out here, we can see very easily. I would go ahead and run this back and at least have this partially started in place. It's just going to make it easier later when you need to put it all in. Slowly start pushing the tray back. Now I'm watching my line, but you're also going to want to come in and take and feel right back here where your suction line is as you're pushing back to make sure that you're not kinking anything. And once you've gotten back so far, this is when you want to go ahead and start making sure everything's aligning correctly. You haven't got tubes where they shouldn't be, like I do right now. Get that up. This is going to come over a little more. That's going there. And now's about the time to start thinking, okay, I need to put my condenser shroud back in. So get your condenser shroud. Remember, the 2 clips have to go into the 2 holes here at the bottom, and you're having to angle it in to get away from this hinge. Now, I always wait to the end to put the fan blade on because I can grab this to help myself, and this wiring harness is just going to come around, so just keep it out of the way for right now. You're going to need to push this back at least far enough to get that second set of holes for these to go into. So with the condenser over here out of the way, go ahead and start this in. Make sure you lift it up high enough that those 2 tabs aren't going to grab the metal here. Now you can utilize the 2 holes that go here and here to help you line this up to get the tabs in there. And just lift up in the back, and you can see I've got the forks went under. And my holes are directly under the plastic. I'm not worried about lining them up with the secondary holes because that pan we pulled out just a second ago, it actually, the screw goes through the plastic, through the little pan, into the metal base on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all I'm wanting to do right now is just make sure I've got my shroud in place because I've got wiggle room to get it lined up to put my screws in. Make sure and take your wiring harness, if you did like I did, and put it in here so you wouldn't pinch it, wouldn't lose it. Push it out the back because it's got to come over to this side. Now, everything's looking good. I'm going to slowly rotate my condenser, holding lines where I need to until I can rotate my condenser back into its shroud. Now, okay, and before you put your condenser all the way in, do remember to put your fan blade back on. Push it all the way to the back. Give it a good spin. Now, remembering those 4 shoulders or 4 angle brackets I told you about. Make sure everything lines up here, goes in position, and it snaps in once, twice, and then you can tell it's in. Then come through, make any adjustments you need to your tubing. This one comes under. Just make sure these 2 aren't touching. This one goes over the top here. So now I can rebend my tubings, my compressor wiring harness, my condenser fan wiring harness, and while I'm here looking at it, I'm going to go to the back and lift my defrost drain up and place it inside my drain pan. Now, where that foam rubber is, you can see there's a piece of tape. I can see that tape where this was stuck on, and I can see now that I've got everything lined up back there. I'm still not going to put that on yet because I've got a lot of room in here to work with currently. So my drain hose is back in. My charging lines are both not touching each other. I'm looking now to make sure I don't have any vibration. This is put back in. Okay, looks good. What I want to do before I put the styrofoam or foam back in is I want to at least get 1, 2, 3, 4 screws in. That way I know my machine compartment, the tray is all back in, everything's aligned properly, and I haven't done any bad things. Okay. Once you get it all the way back, it really doesn't matter which one of the 5 screws, but what I would suggest is pick one. Like I'm using this one on the far right, or correction, far left, because I can actually see the second hole below it. So at least I know if I get it started, I can use that kind of like a pivot point to get the other screws to line up for me. Now my suggestion, don't screw it all the way down yet. So I made sure that I could see the hole. Now I can use it to pivot a little, and I should be able to get the other 4 screws started. I want at least 3 started before I start running them all the way down. And we got started. So we have the 2 end ones in place, and that should help us align to get the other 3. Okay. Okay, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws. Our base is in. Our condenser shroud is all secured properly. Make sure your piping, nothing's touching. Everything's routed correctly. All that's done. So now, just one last double check. Drain line's in position. I've pushed the tubing that's going to get rid of my defrost water down as low as I can get. They have little spacers so you can't put it too low. I've made sure all my tubing is correct. Nothing's going to be touching, rattling, anything like that. So now I'm ready to put my PCB back in here and my little piece of styrofoam. So the foam, actually, you can see the little cutout here. This is where it matches up in the back of the refrigerator. So just make sure that goes up. Push this all the way up against, and then put the tape back down on the ground. And now you've got your divider back in place. And that's all that does. All right. My main board here has 2 little tabs that stick out right here and right here. And if you look back here in the back, you'll find 2 little slots for those to go into. So when you're putting this in, again, remember to angle it in and then bring it forward. It'll go into place. 2 screws hold it on. Now, I'm going to pull my cables back forward. And what we need to remember is you're going to take, and these big cables, they only will go in one spot. They're kind of idiot proof there. Then once you've gotten those cables in, you've got this that has to go in. If you remember, we took it off. It's got a little point that goes in the ceiling, and then it's got this little deal here. So you're going to put this up, go over the hourglass, just make sure you're still in that hole, or you can pull the screw all the way out, but I was able to take it up. Just make sure your wires aren't going to pinch anything. Pull that ground wire back. Now, go ahead and tighten this screw up. Now, your compressor plugs in over here. Your condenser fan plugs in over here. This is a wiring connection off the main board. Plugs in there. That was for my Wi-Fi board. And this was for my water valve. So now we've got all our connections accounted for, and we can, the routing of this, they just had this kind of laying here. I wouldn't let it be in the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up over my dryer. I don't really like a water line being in the, it's up out of the way, and it's not on any hot lines. In fact, it's resting on the process tube for the dryer. Okay, compressors here, ferrite bead, okay. Now, next thing is we got to return our water valve. Now, just for your information, this is the line that actually hooks to the house water. This is routed and goes out the back. You'll see several holes. This would normally be connected to your water source. We've got our water line going out. Take this other line, push it all the way in till you only see one line or none. Pull down on the fitting. Get your little lock, place it in there. That'll hold everything tight. Here's our so now we got our two screws that hold our water valve in place. Now just make sure you can either do this now or later. I'm going to go ahead and do it now before I mount the valve. Let's go ahead and put our two ground screws back in place, because this is probably going to make it a little harder once the water valve goes on. Now you can move this into position. Put your two screws holding the water valve right here. Your water line, your electrical connection. Don't get confused. This has only got two prongs. This actually has four holes. It's going in the back too. I thought I'd lost a connection, but that goes there. One last check to make sure everything's right. Next, you're going to want to put your bottom on. If you remember, I said this was your Wi-Fi board, and you should have one hanging wire connection left. Plug in here. Pull this up. I need to change over to my Torx, because Lex 5 screws are a Torx 20. And last but not least, our kick plate. And this will go up here. And there you have the disassembly and reassembly of the SKS CR30, which everything would apply to the 24 also. It's just a wider version. Thank you for your attention today. Y'all be safe out there.